On today's show, why you shouldn't download iOS 14.2 beta if you're expecting to buy an iPhone 12 at release day, and we answer your questions. When do we expect to see Apple Silicon Macs? Should I buy a first-gen Apple Silicon MacBook? Will the Apple Silicon 12-inch MacBook be powerful enough for college? And thoughts on Apple AR glasses.
This is the Apple Daily.
My name's David for living on iPad, and I simplify Apple so everything just works for you. If you want the latest Apple news, rumours and leaks every weekday at 12 UTC, like this video, subscribe and ring the bell so you don't miss a thing. iOS 14.2 beta, don't install it if you want an iPhone 12 on release day. One of the foibles of Apple is that once you install an update to an iPhone, you can't really roll it back unless you've got a backup of an earlier version. And because a lot of people that are really into their tech like to have the public beta releases and possibly even the developer releases like myself, they may well be on the 14.2 iOS beta. Now, the difficulty is that the iPhone 12s are likely to arrive with iOS 14.1 built in, which is because there are going to be software features in there that Apple don't want us to know about until we get the hardware, or at least until they release the hardware at the launch day event. This causes a problem because if you have a current device on iOS 14.2 and then you buy one with iOS 14.1, you won't be able to install your backup onto it to restore it and have it running out of the box. Of course, you are able to set it up as a brand new device and then install your apps and stuff manually. That's all fine, but it is going to make life a little bit more difficult if you want to, out of the box, set it up directly as a brand new device. What you will probably be able to do though is open the box, set it up as a new device, update it to 14.2, then reset all settings and data, and then install your backup when you restore it. That might be the way to do it. The other option is if you've got a backup for your device that's running the betas that's on iOS 14, you should be able to roll back to that. So just a word of warning, if you're looking to get an iPhone 12 on launch day, you might run into a little problem. It's not going to be a massive issue, but it might take a little bit of workaround, which would be inconvenient at least. So in yesterday's video, I asked you guys for some questions because basically the news is starting to dry up a little bit ahead of the event. Until we get the official announcement, then I'm sure stuff will start rolling again. But at the moment, when you look at any of the rumour sites, it's, oh, this app has done an update. Oh, there's a new emoji. I didn't think you guys would be that excited about some new emojis, but if I'm wrong, let me know in the comments. We'll do all the emoji stuff tomorrow. Thank you for your questions, and we will get into them right now. First comes Yadab Sami. Hopefully got your name right. I will butcher people's names in this. Apologies in advance. When do you expect to see Apple Silicon Macs AMA? That's how we were doing it. Hashtag AMA at the end. So I have done a whole video already on Apple Silicon Macs and the timeline that I expect to see them coming out. So go and check that video out. That would be my first advice. Apple's already told us that the first Apple Silicon Macs are going to arrive before the end of this year. So that's the first step that we have. Next, I've mentioned before, I'm pretty certain that they would at least announce the first Apple Silicon Macs, hopefully alongside the iPhones, because outside of the tech community, outside of people that watch tech videos on YouTube, most normal people won't know that Apple Silicon Macs are even coming, what they are. They won't have been sitting there watching WWDC. They'll probably still be buying Intel Macs as we speak. What Apple needs to do is get as many eyes as possible onto Apple Silicon and show how amazing this stuff will be, especially if they are likely to drop the price slightly, which it looks like they might be looking to do. Also with better performance that you can get pretty much in the higher end MacBook Pros in cheaper than they ever started before entry level price. That will be a pretty stunning deal that I think Apple will want everyone to know about. And the best way to make sure everyone knows about something like that is stick it next to the iPhone, because this is the event that normal people watch, or at least have half a chance of watching. So I think we will get our first Apple Silicon Macs by the end of 2020, as Apple has already stated themselves, but I think they will try to announce them at the iPhone event, even if they're not shipping until maybe mid-November. Beyond that first MacBook, I think we're probably going to be looking at maybe a Mac Mini before the end of this year, maybe a second laptop, maybe a 13-inch MacBook Pro. The 14-inch is most likely to wait until 2021 when they can put in the mini LED panels, but we will see. So the next question comes from UDNX Sujal. I hope I'm getting these right. Should I get the first gen Apple Silicon MacBook or wait for the second gen? Now this is a really interesting question because in the past there have certainly been glitches with first generation products, like the first generation iPhone was basically a pile of garbage. However, it did show exactly what it could do. It showed the concepts, it was the first phone with capacitive touchscreen on glass. It was the first one to use glass instead of plastic for the screen, which stopped it from scratching up. And there's a bunch of other stuff like that. So the first gen Intel Macs didn't have really any big hardware issues when they moved over from PowerPC. However, there was a lot of problems with software, and software that people needed to do their work wouldn't run. That should have been solved, and we'll come to why in a minute. The first generation MacBook Air, which was an Intel Mac, they put in an 80 gig hard drive from an iPod because that was the only small one that they could find. It was kind of pre-SSDs in the mainstream, and so that was quite underpowered as well. The second gen onwards, pretty cool. First gen MacBook 2015 and also the second gen with the thin MacBooks that we expect to be reused as the first Apple Silicon Macs. They had the first generation Butterfly keyboard, which was a disaster. The Intel processors in the first generation 2015 MacBook were super underpowered. That is something that again is being fixed by Apple Silicon. So this is kind of a second generation product already. So solving the problems that we've had with those rollouts in the past, Apple Silicon has been in iPhones and iPads since 2010. Like, this is not a new thing for Apple. They have been creating these processors, they've been working with these processors. When Apple moved over to Apple Silicon, they had 5 years that behind the scenes they had macOS running on Intel processors, but they hadn't told anyone outside of the ecosystem that they were going to move over to an Intel base for Mac software. So it kind of caught people by surprise. I think there was about 4 or 5 months from the announcement through to the first ones coming out. This time, pretty much all of the software tools are in place. So Xcode that people are already using for macOS programming and also for iOS stuff is exactly the same. It just, you hit a different compile button and it works. Apple's also bringing in Rosetta 2. So Rosetta was the original translation layer that they put into Intel Macs when they wanted to run PowerPC software. It wasn't particularly sophisticated at the time, but we've already seen how good Rosetta 2 is at WWDC when they were running Legend of the Tomb Raider at 1080p beautifully. No problems at all on a 2-year-old iPad processor. That sort of thing is fine. They've also already got Universal 2 in place, which is where you create, as a developer, one single binary, and it includes the code for x86 Intel Macs and Apple Silicon Macs, so there's just one download and it works on either system. The system pulls out the bits it needs. So that will be a big help to compatibility from day one. That should be much, much easier. And they've already as well announced that the full range of Adobe Creative Cloud will work on Apple Silicon from day one. All of the Apple apps will work on Apple Silicon from day one, including their pro apps like Final Cut Pro, Logic, all that sort of stuff. And also Microsoft Office Suite. So we know that all of this stuff will already work. Apple's already been issuing developer transition kits to developers. They pay $500. They get a Mac Mini that's basically got an iPad Pro inside it with 16 gigs of RAM and a 512 gig SSD, something like that. So they've been running it already, and they're saying that Intel software through the translation layer is running basically better than Intel software runs on Intel. So I think we're going to be pretty safe this year. But a very good question. The next question comes from Eliska Kiss. Hi, so I watched a couple of your videos in which you mention the 12-inch Silicon MacBook being very powerful. Is this true, or should I buy a Pro one for college? Everything at the minute is speculation. Everything is speculation and kind of extrapolating from the rumours that we're hearing. At the moment, it looks very much like the base level 12-inch MacBook with Apple Silicon is going to be pretty much as powerful as like an entry-level 16-inch MacBook right now, but also the A14X chip, assuming that that's what it runs on, and an A14, will be around about the power level of an i9 processor, but with fantastically better battery life, so 15 to 20 hours of battery life potentially in that thin and light chassis with no fan and running at like Intel i9 speeds. So it's going to be pretty much a screamer, assuming that's what happens and they don't put an A14 in. Even if they put in an A14, it's going to be kind of i5 level, so it's going to be pretty powerful. Now, you ask if it's going to be enough for you at college. What are you studying? It's going to be very much dependent on that. If you're going to do a degree where you're going to be editing a lot of 4K video or 8K video or stuff like that, maybe not. But it will be able to do basic 4K editing, no problems. They've already showed it running 3 streams with all of the transitions and color corrections all in real time. So I don't think it's going to have any problems power-wise. If you're trying to do like heavy duty data crunching, again, shouldn't be any problems. The only thing you might run into is storage issues, because if you need to have a huge amount of storage, it might get expensive because it's all going to be internal and it's all going to be with what you buy at the time. I don't expect very much upgradability. There is a whole video on upgradability of Apple Silicon Macs coming hopefully later today, if I can get the edit finished. So look out for that around about 5 p.m, 6 p.m. GMT. That should be coming out today. It completely depends on what you're studying at college. If you need massive amounts of power because you're doing something along the lines of video editing as a degree, you might need to go for a Pro, maybe hang on for it. But bear in mind that these cheaper Apple Silicon Macs will probably be as powerful as the current MacBook Pros from day one and cost you much less. And final question today comes from MindTech. What are your thoughts on the whole Apple AR glasses thing? Not seen rumours for a while, but what sort of things would you want them to do if they get released? So, number one, I don't expect that we will see them at this event. I don't expect that we will see them this year. I think they will probably be released maybe to developers at WWDC next year, which would be awesome. If they decide to come out and release them this year, fantastic. If we find out that Tim Cook has been wearing them at every presentation going back to WWDC last year or WWDC this year, that would be awesome. That would be a brilliant little prank. If maybe he's even been reading his teleprompter from his glasses, that would be super cool. But what do I want to see on them? So the rumours are they're going to start at $400, which is like super cheap for something like this. Bear in mind that's like the cost of a base level iPad mini. So what do I think they're going to be doing? I think they're going to be fairly basic in the first generation, and this is what we were kind of talking about before. The first generation Apple Watch kind of sucked. There's one over there that I was wearing until yesterday. My new one came, woohoo! Unboxing is on the channel already. Apple Watch SE Nike edition. Yeah, the first generation of a lot of Apple stuff has sucked. With Apple Glass, I think it's going to be called. $400, I think it's going to be fairly limited. All the processing pretty much is going to be happening on your iPhone. Battery life is probably going to be a day at best, I would guess. But what's it going to do? I think directions is going to be a big thing. For navigation, I think it's going to give you notifications. I think it will be kind of like what you can do with your Apple Watch right now. It might be another option rather than having an Apple Watch on your wrist to have the glasses on your head. I think we're going to get directions. I think we're going to get notifications. I think there might be some interesting stuff where it can place AR items in the room. They're probably going to come with a LiDAR sensor, as we've got in the iPhone 12 Pros and in the iPad Pros. They seem to be a sensor that's pretty much designed for doing AR, as well as obviously the enhancements to videos and photos that we're expecting. So I think that's kind of where it's going to be going. I think a few AR games might come along with it, but I think in general it's going to be more around maybe mapping and maybe location accuracy, finding your AirTags, all that kind of stuff will be day one stuff. There will be some killer apps. What it isn't going to be is it's going to be kind of like Apple Watch but without the fitness aspect, I think. So it's going to be a really difficult thing to kind of get your head around. It would be fantastic if it can do Face ID and do the whole pop people's names up at a meeting above their heads. But it will be a nice, hopefully discreet way to be checking your notifications without kind of distraction. I think it's going to be interesting. I don't know, but teleprompter would be a great thing for me, because right now I have to hold an iPad and keep looking down at it, and it really annoys me. So I hope you've kind of liked this AMA thing. I think we're going to change it to iCave Answers, maybe? That's what we'll call it from now on. So if you want me to answer any more questions, hashtag iCave Answers. Leave it in the comments here, or tweet to me on Twitter. Tag me at Living on iPad and hashtag iCave Answers. I would love to answer your questions on the show. You get a little shout out on here And if you want to send a video question, I would love that so much. Send that over via Twitter. Just tweet me as a little video of you asking your question and I'll include it in the show. Because I think that'd be really fun to make this a bit more of a community that other tech YouTubers don't seem to have. What do you think? As long as you love it, I will keep doing it. And thank you so much for watching. If you want to join the notification squad, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell, and let me know in the comments that you've done it, and I will give you a shout out. Thank you so much. See you tomorrow.